Alright, how's it going, guys? So it's been a long time. It's been a hot minute since I've been uploading some stuff. So I mean, a lot of you probably already know this, but I've been out of town for about a week or so for just some medical shit. Just a little while ago. So I've been kind of playing catch up when I got back. So that's kind of the gist of why I haven't been uploading stuff recently. I've got like a really small viewer base though, so I don't think it's a big issue for you guys. But I thought I'd mention it regardless. Anyways, recently been grinding the ladder because a lot of times people like to use rank as an argument point, so I felt I really needed to just kind of take the time and just take a go at Bear, and only yesterday, as a matter of fact, I just made it into Bear 5, so I'm actually pretty happy about that. I might try to make a Mad Dash for Dragon one of these days, just to see if I can make it that far, but that's going to be in the future. I want to kind of, like I said, focus on some YouTube stuff for a little bit now, but what I want to focus this video on is some pretty critical information that kind of a lot of players sometimes ignore that you have access to at the beginning of the game. See, every game is different in Black Survival, obviously due to kind of the nature of RNG, so areas close off at different times in different games, you face different players using different characters throughout different games, and while I've always thought, and I still think that the idea of a route, quote-unquote route, as kind of a basic guideline is crucial for a lot of players, routes are never meant to be followed verbatim, and as a player, you must always be prepared for flexibility. So with that in mind, we have to kind of get out of the mindset of playing the same each game and get kind of into the mindset of reacting to the environment and reacting to information that each unique game offers. What I'm going to be focusing on today is information that you can process before the game even starts. And that information is going to be information you get from your lobby composition. So a lot of people like to turn up their nose at the idea of a meta, and I think it's because that the meta has been kind of a stigma against it because of kind of like the tier whores and meta slaves you see in a game like Overwatch, right? But like it or not, there exists a meta in every game. A meta. For me, trying to explain it very loosely, it's basically what's commonly employed by players in a game, because these choices kind of give them large amounts of success or effectiveness. I mean, that's kind of a really weird, loose definition, and it probably isn't the best. So, I found kind of like the dictionary definition of metagaming, and I think that might explain it a little better. So, metagaming is any strategy, action, or method used in a game that transcends a prescribed rule set or uses external factors to affect the game or goes beyond the supposed limits or environments set by the game. I mean, that might be a bit confusing, but I hope you guys kind of understand what I'm saying. The meta is kind of reacting to other players, how other players play, what's common, stuff along the lines of that, I suppose. Again, these are just my kind of interpretations of it. You can agree with me or disagree with me by all means, but for the sake of this video, we're taking that into account. So what this really means is to play around the meta, you're playing around things in the game that are influenced by your knowledge of how players typically play, as an average player. So there's no rule in the game that says what's going to happen if you try to start at the lighthouse when you're facing 3 Leons. However, past game experiences, general discussions in the Reddit, the Discord, about the meta from the community might discourage you from starting at lighthouse in this certain situation. And this is the kind of thing that I think is important for us to all have dialogue on, and this is all important for us to improve, to learn how players typically act, how players typically use the terrain, use items, stuff along the lines of that. So, in the future, I'm going to try to be making a few more kind of quote-unquote meta-related videos in the future. But for now, I guess it's high time we actually got started on the actual topic on, like I said, lobby composition. So, first thing I want to talk about is identifying threats. So, I don't think anyone would disagree with me about this, but we all know that the matchmaking system isn't perfect. And very often you're going to have a odd man out scenario where you'll either be the one person whose rank is significantly higher than the rest of the entire lobby, or you'll be the one person whose rank is significantly lower than the rest of the lobby. I think everyone talks about that. Or there's one other scenario as well that I think isn't talked about as much, but I think everyone would completely agree with me saying you could have an otherwise completely balanced lobby with just one other player who's significantly higher or lower. This is basically the same scenario that I mentioned before, except that one player who's significantly higher is just not you. And I want to talk about how to react in these scenarios when they happen, because this information can actually be pretty key to what type of playstyle and what type of items and where you want to go in terms of the terrain that you want to kind of enact in this game. And again, I'm going to be drawing from my own videos a lot, I suppose. So I'll be linking the video to the offensive spectrum in the description of this video. I might actually just make a playlist of general guides, and I'll just link that playlist because, like I said, I've got a few other ideas along the lines. I've got a basic food guide that I've got kind of typically want to have on the way. I've got a animal guide that I've got in the works as well that I want to have, and plus I've got a I guess basic character guide, not really basic character guide, but like what characters I would recommend to newer players and why, what their strengths are, things along like the lines of that, as well as potentially, I'm not sure if I'd go through this either because I've got such a list of stuff I want to do. I've also got the idea of doing a kind of how to counter certain characters. So there's a lot of characters that are kind of pub stompers. There's a lot of characters that newer players have trouble with because they don't know how to play around. JP, Jackie, those characters come very, very readily to mind when we talk about the Herbivore League. So basically that, Leon as well, I think. But anyways, yeah, so basically that, I want to do kind of a video kind of briefly talking about these characters and how you might want to play around them as a newer player. But getting back on topic, because we all know I always stray from the topic at hand. First scenario is if you're in a rank much below your opponents. So let's say you're a wolf in an almost all dragon lobby. Now, I mean, to be honest, this is an extreme example. That's probably not going to happen. I mean, this can be applied to your wolf in a lobby with 3 dragons, 2 bears, then a pile of lions, or something like that. But anyways, going back to it, just the idea is you're a much lower rank than everyone else in the lobby. And if I'm being honest, I never actually enjoy recommending this. And oftentimes, people hate on me and get angry at me and think I'm shit and think I'm bad when I do recommend this. But in a situation like this, you should be opting for a very conservative playstyle. And I don't say that because I want the community to become like passive cheesers, only looking to get second place. I don't want that, okay? Let me get that out of the way, okay? Let me get that out of the way that I saying I don't like the idea of recommending just playing hyper conservative all the time, okay? I don't like that. But realistically, okay, you have to realize if you're in a lobby with 9 players who are obviously much better than you, then if you play anything but conservative, you're going to die in the first 2 rounds, and you're going to lose a large chunk of your rank. Well, you're going to lose a chunk of your rank points, okay? Like, it won't be as many rank points, because obviously your rank is much lower than everyone else. But in a case like this, it's very obvious that you can. In a case like this where it is very obvious that you cannot win, then it's in your best interest to minimize the rank points you lose. And like you said, it's not going to be that many rank points, even if you come very, very far and behind. If you're against a lot of dragons and you're a wolf, you're going to lose like 3 rank points in total, probably. But anyways, in addition to that, right, playing versus people of much higher caliber will reward you with some insane rank point gain if you finish in second place, even with 0 kills. If you can finish in second place against very, very high ranked players, which isn't impossible to do as a lower ranked player if you play smart and play conservative and play in a way that conserves, in a way that avoids risk as much as you can and conserves your survivability, then it's not going to be unheard of for you to finish in the top 5 at the very least, even against, like I said, high-ranked players. So in this situation, like I said right here, you basically have the choice to either lose, 5 or maybe 8 rank points if you play aggro into this comp, or you have the option to potentially gain, 20 rank points. I don't know, I'm just throwing out numbers right here. And in this situation where it's basically not possible to win, then there's not really any reason to go into this game with the mindset that you're guaranteeing yourself losing rank. And again, let me be clear right here. I'm recommending this in a situation where the entire lobby is obviously of much higher rank, or large percentage of the lobby is a much higher rank. You're a wolf, you're going up against dragons, multiple dragons maybe, or even bears. Like if you're a wolf going against bear, that's not that hard. That's really not that uncommon to be a wolf to be a lion, to be going up against these higher echelon tier players. So this is when I'm recommending it, and like again, like I want to stress right here that I'm not saying like if you're a lion and you get a lobby with 5 lions and maybe 2 bears, that you should just give up and play conservatively. I'm not saying that. That's not in any way what I'm saying. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way. Okay, so the second scenario, and this is going to be a discussion point right here as well, is when you're facing an otherwise balanced lobby, except there's one player who's one of these players are not like the other. One of these players are much higher rank than you, right? So let's say you've got a lobby of 9 lions, and then you've got 1 dragon just out of the blue, and like this is really not that uncommon either. This is really not that uncommon. So in this situation, the major threat is just this one player. So it's in no way impossible to win this game, right? I think I said that wrong. Okay, it's not impossible to win this game. Okay, you should not just give up in this situation because there's only one player who's really very, very dominant here, and because this game is so focused, the focal point of this game is punishing, conserving and gaining and stealing momentum, stuff like that. Because of that, all you have to do is be playing around this one player, and you're going to want to be playing around him to try to counter him as much as you can. And people get so wound up in dedicated routes and dedicated items and dedicating themselves to a few specific areas that they go to, that they kind of forget that there's actually a lot of armors and items that can actually offer a fairly significant counterplay to quite a lot of the major threats in the game. And the majority of these items can actually be integrated into most basic routes that people take without really having to go too far out of the way. I mean, let's talk specifics here, right? Let's take a very, very basic example right here. ISIL, okay? We're going against an ISIL. In this matchup scenario, we can have very, very easy access to EOD boots. And I'm talking about this item first because of how kind of splashable this item is. The steel is awkward, okay? I will definitely admit the steel is a bit awkward, but steel has a lot of uses, and I think most players should have an understanding of how to integrate steel, or how to use steel, how to use kind of all the steel that they make. So if they make 2 steels, they should have a way of using them both. Generally with with a shield and with legs is generally the most typical way if you're just splashing, like I said, for EOD boots. If you use steel for a weapon, obviously, I would highly recommend you make use of any other steels that, the other steels that you get from crafting that as well. But in general, even with the steel, which I definitely admit the steel is a little bit awkward to integrate, it's really not that hard to splash an EOD boot onto your build. EOD suit, that's kind of awkward to splash on, okay? I will definitely say that. It's not, I wouldn't really call it, like, impossible or unviable, but it's definitely awkward to splash onto a build. But EOD boots is really not that hard. You just have to compensate for the steel. And this is basically going to be kind of a theme for a lot of these items, that they're very, very easy, or maybe not very, very easy, but they are possible to splash onto a route without too much willy-nilly. So against gun characters, let's move on to that. Against gun characters, we have access to Battle Boots and Battle Suit. Now, Battle Suit is one of the least splashable items in the game in terms of these counter pick items. But I'm bringing it up out of kind of formality. So like oftentimes, if you have to go out of your way for the kind of the diving suit, it's not really too worth it, because like diving suit areas, beach and dock, don't really give you too much. Like yes, you get turtle shell. So if you're building into shield, I guess you have access to that. And I mean, dock can give you tuna, but tuna is a very RNG reliant item as well. So having to search for that is just definitely awkward. And dock doesn't have rubber as well, so that's kind of another awkward thing that we have to kind of talk about right there. So a lot of times Battlesuit, if you don't have it planned into your route already, it's often not worth time going out of your way just to counter build a dragon gun character. Boots, however, battle boots are the exact opposite. Battle boots are like super splashable. They're very, very easy to put into a build, because all you do is you bring boots to the temple and you have battle boots done, completely done, and they're really good, and they're like basically free. And the reduction they offer is minimal compared to battle suits, but they're just so easy to make, and they're so easy to they're much more splashable than EOD boots. Like EOD boots, like I said before, steel it's pretty awkward if you don't have it integrated into your route already. But battle boots, I can't think of any route that can't fit battle boots into their build. In all honesty, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit biased, but because like I don't know, I use stab characters a lot. But I honestly, battle boots are really easy to spot. And plus, a lot of the items you get from battle boot, like cloth, you can get cloth in a lot of different areas. Like I don't think there's any build like, and I'm talking about like these preset dedicated builds that people tend to sometimes take, which I disagree with taking route and reading it verbatim. But I don't think there's any really quote unquote route that does not pass cloth because it's so spread out on the map. You get it in so many different areas. And if you just take the cloth and you kill animals, because like I said, if you're playing, you should be kind of hunting animals just in general. So you're going to have access to leather very often throughout the game just from dogs. So that in itself is going to give you the knee pads, which is really nice. And like I said, cloth is so easy to find. All you have to do is find 2. And if you kill a dog and you have 2 cloth, all you need is boots, which is really not that hard to find either. Fire station, you can just pick up boots while you're, I guess, getting stamina items, or a lot of times people get batteries. Trail, you can get it there as well. If maybe you need gemstones, maybe you need healing items, you need some grass. But it's very easy to fit onto almost every build. And I've been talking about this way too long. I just want to kind of focus on the point that it's very easy to fit onto a build if you're going, you say you're going against a dragon, and it's a pretty scary looking dragon, and they're a gun character, then you have access to that. Next thing I want to talk about is what I think is actually really underrated, and that's the closed helm. And I mean, it's not really that underrated because I mean a lot of people like the Burgonet, but I want to talk a little bit first about kind of the closed helm, because the closed helm, just looking at the closed helm first, and you have the option to go into 2 different items, so that's actually really important, and both of those items actually go into a way of counter building an opponent. So you can make the closed helm, and then you can make the decision on what to build it into based on the current lobby composition of the game, and based on who's essentially the biggest threat. So like I said, building into the closed helm is a decision that you can kind of make based off your lobby composition at the beginning of the game, but upgrading your closed helm is a decision you can make into the late game when you're 5 players left. So Imperial Burgonet is going to be giving you a nice bit of an edge versus characters like Yuki, Jackie, maybe Zukai, and this is relevant because I've seen some pretty scary Yuki. I don't know if I call them mains. Maybe they're just playing it because it's new toy syndrome, but I've seen quite a lot of Yuki players, and I've seen quite a few really good Zukai mains as well on the ladder, and I'm talking like high tier players, right? I'm talking like dragon players. I've seen quite a few dragon Zukais. I've seen quite a few Yukis in every tier of play, in every rank really. And I also thought I'd mention Jackie as well, because even a Jackie that isn't super highly skilled can be really scary to deal with if they've been fed, which happens a lot at lower ranks, which is why Jackie is such a pub stomper in lower ranks, because people don't give Jackie respect in the same sense that people don't give JP respect, and they can in lower ranks, right? Like in herbivore ranks, and if you don't give them respect, then they can very easily kind of take off with what they want to be doing. So while I'm on the topic of blades as well, I should also talk about this as well. Sword Stopper it's a really underrated item right now. It got the armor buff, and like that's really good. Like the armor buff is pretty fantastic. Like the ability isn't like amazing, but like it's really good armor. It's good armor for an armor with an ability like this. It's really easy to make. However, this is assuming you get early access to the arm warmers, which I have to say that for sure. I don't want you spending 40 seconds looking just for arm warmers, because arm warmers are a little bit of an RNG item in a sense. They're less RNG for stab routes, I find, because stab routes pass basically every single location with an arm warmer in it, so a lot of times you just find arm warmers eventually. Like Lance Poseidon route goes through Uptown, it goes through school, it goes through slum, and it's almost a given that you're going to find arm warmers. So I just want to say, like against blade characters, if you get early access to arm warmers, not if you're looking for arm warmers, if you find arm warmers early in the game, then you might want to consider just building up directly into that instead of, like, I don't know, if you're trying to build into shield, or if you're trying to build into, I don't know, anything else. So if you're trying to build into anything else and you're against a really, really scary blade character, see if you can integrate Sword Stopper into your build. And again, all these things I'm talking about I'm trying to talk about not going out of your way for the route. Because if you're going out of the way just to build a counter build item, then you're kind of losing the benefit that you gain by building them, by making lost time, and by going out of your way, and by maybe, if you haven't memorized a recipe, trying to learn how to trying to go through the in-game recipe list. So again, keep all this in mind when you're looking at these items, because these are items I'm not really recommending you go completely out of your way. It's like, if you don't visit any areas with arm warmers, I'm not saying go look in Slum for 2.5 minutes just for arm warmers. That's definitely not at all what I'm trying to say, right? So all of this is assuming you get access to these items, assuming these items are along the way, assuming that these items are not too far out of the way, assuming you can accommodate these items. So I talked about Burgonet, and I mean, Burgonet is also pretty nice. Like, Burgonet is, like I said, Burgonet is really, really good. It's also pretty nice versus characters kind of rely on skill damage. I guess characters like Magnus or Cicella, or Alex or Aya, I suppose. I mean, I'm just listing off names. I might be wrong if I be missing a lot of people. I'm just listing off names. Just, it's kind of nice versus characters that kind of rely on skill damage, because the skill damage reduction is pretty cool as well. Like, that's an effect people actually forget about a lot. Like, people know it's what it does for Blade, but people kind of forget about that, the skill damage reduction on Burgonet, which is actually really, really cool. But moving on, Helm of Banneret, obviously the other buildable option, and while it doesn't have anywhere near, well, I mean, it has near, while it doesn't have the armor that you get with Burgonet, it can give you some decent enough resistances versus some kind of scarier stab characters, like if you're trying to push into a much higher ranked Fiora into the late game, or even maybe Shuichi. That's potentially that as well, or maybe a Rogue Camilo, something like that. So, like I said, you have that option to decide where to build your close help into when you get to that point in the game. So maybe there's like 5 players left. You check, you see what masteries are, you see what levels are, you see what you see what you're dealing with, and you can decide whether you want Burgonet or Banneret. And it's just a nice kind of a thing to be able to decide, and that's why you shouldn't have your decision set in stone whether you're going to go into the Burgonet. You shouldn't, because if you have your dedicated route, then you might not build Banneret ever, but you might really appreciate that against some characters. And finally, I want to briefly mention Amazon's armor for stuff like Roselio, or even the Shuichi matchup. And in general, I find kind of going out of your way to get the swimsuit on non-gun builds to be pretty annoying. I mentioned this for Battlesuit as well, just because the items you get at those locations are not really stellar for non-gun builds. I mean, in this case, you don't need rubber, so dock and then trying to get tuna while you find swimsuit isn't horrible. I don't know. I just find it to be annoying to build Amazon's armor, just as a personal preference. So I think I want to leave that decision up to you, because I mean, I don't have strong feelings on it either way. I just avoid it myself. So I haven't tried it a lot. I haven't, gone against Dragon Roselios and said, okay, I'm going to build Amazon's armor specifically for this Roselio. So I just want to get that out there, and then you guys can make the decision whether it's viable to fit that into your build or not. Because, like I said, I find it kind of annoying, but 30% is a pretty big reduction, a pretty big number to reduce damage by, and that's what you get from Amazon. So that is a pretty big number. So if you want to commit to it, I don't know. I guess in a few situations, it's probably worth it if you can rely off like sheet metal armor and build into some steel items, and then finish off Amazons when you have the chance. I don't know. Just wanted to talk about it. Just wanted to bring it up as a discussion topic, because I think people forget about that a lot of the time, and I think we should talk about it. We should consider it. And if you need to take the chance to counter build, then I mean, the option is right there. So as I mentioned, there's a pretty significant amount of counterplay to different characters. And again, this is for when there's only one clear-cut dominant opponent. And what I want to talk about now is how lobby composition can influence how you start the game. So I'll start with a few obvious cases that happens to be frequently in games I think we can all kind of relate to. So the first is something I alluded to at the very beginning of the video. The Lighthouse versus Leon situation right here. So Leon is a very popular character, and Lighthouse is such a free area for him to go for. So we need to talk about that. So in general, it doesn't matter who you are, what character you're using, you really cannot contest Leon at the Lighthouse. And when you consider that some games, a lot of games, you can be facing multiple Leons at one time, going to the Lighthouse is kind of a surefire way if you just get double torpedoed into lethal damage just within the first 30 seconds of the game. So give respect to Leon, guys. Don't fuck with him at the Lighthouse. Just give him the location, and like, you shouldn't. I don't know. A lot of times I wouldn't even recommend. I wouldn't recommend ever having a build that says, okay, start at the Lighthouse, just because, like I said, it's such a common occurrence to have to just give up Lighthouse to Leon in the first place. So it's not really worth planning a quote-unquote route where you are supposed to start at the Lighthouse. Next case here is another common occurrence, and that's an overflooding at Uptown. Now, I've said before, I say this all the time before as a stab main, and I'll say it again, Uptown is easily one of the best areas in the game, one of the best areas to start in the entire game for any character that can support the weapon drops at that location. So it has access to an armor. It has access to an armor piece of basically every type of armor piece other than head armor. It has 4 really good healing items that build into healing items, not including needles, which, like, I don't really like. That builds into acupressure, but I don't really consider that as well. So 4 items that can build into food other than needles. And these are pretty good health recovery items as well. And it's got 3 items that can build into stamina recovery items as well. So it's got a lot of stuff that you can have access to right here. And because of this, there are many characters that will try to contest this area at the very beginning. So Fiora, Shuichi, Jackie, Yuki, Kiera, and Zukaya. I've seen all these characters love to fight for this area. And if you're going into this bloodbath, you need to kind of know what to expect. And typically, from my experiences at least, and feel free to correct me as well, because like I said, we're creating discussion right here, but typically, out of these bloodbaths, Fiora and Yuki come out on top of these large multiplayer brawls. So counterattack isn't a single instance ability. It works on every player for a duration of time, so it's very effective at sustaining through a multiplayer brawl, and Yuki just kind of has the raw stats to kind of fight it out. So those are typically the 2 characters I kind of see out on top. I mean, Zukai also has Feeling Hot, but I don't know, it's a little bit awkward because, like, he has to lose the health rate here, he has to lose a bit of time for the channel. So I don't know, Zukai's a little bit up in the air right there. He's kind of in a similar boat with Fiora as well, because it deals damage for it deals damage not in a single instance, it's for a duration of time, and it's a pretty long duration of time. But like I said, typically from my experiences, I see Yuki and Fiora come out on top, and I wanted to give honorable mentions to Zukai in this situation as well. In a 1v1 situation, Shuichi also has a pretty good chance of coming out on top. If he doesn't get, like, silenced by Yuki because of Phony Deal. Like, Phony Deal basically forces anyone out of an area. But, like, in a 3-player brawl between, like, Shuichi, Fiora, and Yuki, it's rare that Shuichi is going to be coming out on top. But like you said, in a 1v1 situation, you've got Shuichi versus Fiora. You just Phony Deal Fiora, she's going to get out of there. You just Phony Deal Yuki as long as he doesn't silence you, and he's going to get out of there. So it's only once you get in, like, 3 players, because you can't Phony Deal both of them, right? So that's basically it. And this is all kind of important information to kind of recognize in lobby composition before you kind of decide to start in Uptown. You want to see how many people are going to be potentially going there. You want to see if you have a chance against taking these people. That being said, I gotta say this right here, because, like you said, Uptown is, like, one of the best areas to start in the entire game. So that all being said, I'm a stab main, and the majority of the time, I just take the risk, dude. I just take the risk and I fight at Uptown. That's regardless of what the lobby composition is, because the risk or reward for fighting out at Uptown is actually really, really high. And, like, a lot of times I'm a greedy bastard, and a lot of times a lot of people are greedy bastards. And, like, if you want to start at Uptown, like, a lot of times, because, like, I still play a lot of Jenny in normal games. Let me be clear about that. I play a lot of Jenny in normal games. So a lot of times, if I'm playing as Jenny, it doesn't matter what the lobby composition. I'll just go for it, dude. A lot of times, I'll bring Jenny just directly into Uptown. I'll just hope to kind of outplay my opponent with kind of revenge play, with kind of hitting them a significant amount of time with RNG, with stuff like that. Because a lot of times, like, because Uptown's such a such a scary area for a lot of players. So a lot of times you kind of can outplay your opponents in this area in it a lot sometimes. Plus misses are like pretty bullshit sometimes too. But like a lot of times I'll just take that risk, dude. And I mean, playing Jenny, you have play dead, so I guess it's a little bit less of a risk. But like a lot of times I'll just go for it. So that's why I have to mention about Uptown, just because it's such a good area and it's such a high reward for taking the risk area that a lot of times, like, if you want to just ignore what I'm saying and just fuck the lobby composition, fuck everything, and just run for Uptown and just hope everything goes well, then more power to you, because I do that myself as well. But you need to learn your limitations as a player, and as your character, you need to learn the limitations as your character, and don't commit to something that you know you can't handle. Is basically what I'm trying to express right here. The next thing right here is a little more generally accepted by the community, and also a little bit less relevant to kind of how uncommon and inconsistent gun users are. The most common gun start is the beach, and the only two characters that can actually contest this area are Aya and Bernice. And I want to tell you that Aya will win this matchup 1v1, but you need to realize guns are really inconsistent, and they're really high damage. So with the help of Leg Shot, in the Aya versus Bernice matchup, the winner is literally whoever misses less. Like that's not even a meme. Like I'm not even saying that as like a meme on guns. It's literally whoever misses less, because like you can assume they're gonna miss a significant amount of times. I mean, significant is anyone who plays gun, I think, can attest to this, that you are gonna miss a fairly significant amount of times in your very, very early game. So that in tandem with Leg Shot means a lot of times Bernice can kind of beat Aya if you just dodge enough hits. So, I mean, I never like recommending basing how you're going to beat a character off of accuracy, but I just want to mention that a lot of times, if you're an Aya player, a lot of times you might actually lose the 1v1 at the very beginning of the game to a Bernice because of accuracy and because of Leg Shot. So, I just wanted to talk about that, and basically what I'm talking about right there is if you're not an Aya or you're not a Bernice, the accuracy isn't the negative accuracy is not going to be enough to help you contest the beach. If you're fighting an Aya and if you're fighting a Bernice, then starting the beach is not a good idea, because you're just going to lose 1v1 to these characters. Like you'll dodge a few hits, but the damage output from these characters is too much damage for you to try to fight back. Like there's no other gun character in the game that can start at the beach if there's an Aya or a Bernice in the lobby. So that's very, very important to talk about right here. Talking about throw characters for a second right here, throw characters have a lot of options open to them, and it's sometimes hard to predict their game plan, but typically they'll be visiting factory for wires, and then fire station or lighthouse for batteries during the mid game. So keep that kind of in the back of your mind, that those areas are going to be going to eventually. The starting options for throw characters are actually, like I said, very diverse. So Astraf roots start at the cemetery, and they use the boomerang until they can finish off the full Astraf, because the mid-tier items for the Astraf, like the Javelin, just don't have the ammo, I guess you'd call it. They don't have the quantity of throwables for you to actually use them as a weapon. D-Axe roots as well, they build tomahawks in the forest, obviously, so that's where they're going to be starting. Zura Dagger is going to be starting at the chapel, and a lot of people like to make Stormbolts very early off in the game, which means that Fire Station is also like a staple for a lot of throw starts. And this is particularly relevant if you're a JP main, because if you try to start into the Fire Station versus a lobby with Cicella or Adriana or William or even potentially Camilo, then you're just going to take a lot of damage and be bullied out. So it's very important to realize Chapel is typically a more defensively oriented, less offensively oriented version of the throw routes. More focused on building up their weapons and stuff. So if you notice a character that enjoys that playstyle, or you notice a person who enjoys that playstyle, then that's one of the starts that you can kind of have to be prepared for. But typically these are all fairly good routes. Stormbolt obviously being the most offensive route. It's not really a route, it's a location. It's a one area location, but it's typically the most, like I said, offensive option for throw characters at the very, very early parts of the game. And another thing, I kind of talked about the chapel a little bit, and while I feel like this kind of applies to lobby composition as a lot more, like I said, a lot more balance oriented blunt or throw or blade characters oftentimes like to start here. Typically more blunt characters and throw characters from what I've seen, but in general, this information generally comes from hearing noises and paying attention to what's happening in the game. So if the temple is an area of high contention in the early game, then trying to build into the Tiara Light is often a bad idea. Even if it's like a planned quote-unquote item that you go for, you have to consider this, right? Considering that people who go to the chapel in the early game will almost always be try to be aiming to bring 2 bishops' cassocks each when they leave. It really doesn't take a lot of people to basically entirely deplete the crosses from the church. 2 people get 2 bishops' cassocks each, then you're down to 1 cross. So if one other person finds a cross, then it's gone. And you really don't want to be wasting your time looking for something that you won't find. So if you know that the chapel is being contested a lot, if you see maybe if you see maybe Heart piece the chapel, you hear a lot of noises there, then building into the circlet, building into the tiara, trying to build into the Tiara of Light is going to be a bad idea, because you're going to be stuck with just the upgrade from the glass pieces, and I think it's like 32 armor if I'm not mistaken, which is really not that good. You can upgrade other head items, like there's the helms, like you mentioned, there's OPS, there's a lot of decent options that you can go, as opposed to just holding on to this mid-tier head item and hoping you find a cross in the late game. And the kind of final thing I want to talk about over here is hand users. Now, hand is probably the most versatile of all weapon masteries, in my opinion, and throw really has viable starts in stuff like forest, hotel, temple, lighthouse if you're Leon, as I mentioned, or even something like well. And a lot of these areas give massive item advantage, and so they're very, very high. They're points of very, very high contention for a lot of players. So if you're planning to start in these areas, you need to analyze your lobby to see which hand characters you might be fighting up against, and you have to have a backup plan if you're not confident going against that specific character or that specific player. If you know that player is really good as well, then that's the other thing right there. If you have to be a little bit leery of the characters and as well as the players if you recognize player names. And the last thing to mention, just a little thing here before I end the video, is on kind of hyper offense characters like Jackie. So I think hyper offense characters, because like I said, this is lobby composition before you start the game, you should check their aptitude for pursuit. This is just a little thing, but the last thing you want to do is run from a Jackie when you think you're safe and then get hit a second time for lethal damage. So identify pursuit users. That's really the only aptitude you need to pay attention for, because the other aptitudes you don't really have control over your opponent. Like, you see your opponent has accelerate. Whoop-de-doo, what's that going to tell you? It might, I don't know, it might tell you a little bit of information about what they might do on their route. They might take routes that take less stamina consumption, but like in general, you can't stop them from using accelerate. You can't stop them from using counterattack. I mean, unless you just want to just not attack, I guess. But like, I mean, a lot of times they just spam that anyway. So it's like, and a lot of times you just enter an area and set it off, and it goes. So in general, identify pursuit users and give that respect when you are taking large amounts of damage, and when you have to back out, you're going to want to back out enough times to mitigate the pursuit. And that's going to about wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this type of video. Like I said, I'm going to be uploading a lot of things in the future. I am also going to potentially be uploading some raw gameplay videos in the future, as well as some more tournament information soon as well. So, as always, if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like and let me know, and I guess I'll see you guys next time.